I'm doing it now. Add moderator. What are you, K-A? Add, confirm. All right, so you're there. Did you get added?
I'm looking. How do I do live?
I don't know. All right, well, this is crazy. Oh, there you are. Yay! Hey, Care Bear.
Wait, I don't hear you.
This is crazy. All right, I'm on my live. Sassy attorney. Boomer extraordinaire. Let's see what we've got. Any kind of questions? So, it was a snowy day in parts of the South, which is super, super fun, but also scary.
Royal joined.
Yep. Oh, yay, hello. So I hope it wasn't too bad with the weather where everyone else was, because
Emma joined.
Awesome. Hello. Answer 'em. We were talking about the weather. So where I am, it definitely had snowfall, which we're out of town for the weekend, part of us. Not all of us. So, but it was fun, and never fun to drive in the snow, but always fun to play in it. So hopefully getting back won't be too terrible. But yes, I'm here to answer any Sassy attorney questions. Hi. Hey there. Yay. Say hi. Yay. This is so neat. I don't know what I'm doing. Just trying to press buttons and say hey. So we've talked a lot lately about, it started with the city of Washington, obviously, and kind of the shenanigans. Hey, girlfriend. Yay. I love it. This is so fun. Yay. It's like a party, but no one has to leave their house, which is fun. So, yay, Pam Pippin. What is up? Love her. So sweet. Definitely one of my favorite people from in town. Also had to mention, because you can kind of see it, I just think this is so cute. This is my little off to cause a kerfuffle shirt. I bought it on a TikTok shop and just absolutely love it. Anytime I can get a graphic tee with a possum in my life, I'm going to do it, right? RSVP, yes, for the possum graphic tee. But yeah, just excited. Thank you all for joining the live and for following the Sassy Attorney account. It's been a whirlwind the last couple months. So I, for a few years, had about 180, maybe 40 followers. And so now to be almost at 1,200 is pretty crazy. But I think it just goes to show that there's a need to get some of these stories out. A lot of these stories are probably ones that have been heard in the rumor mill around town. And to get them out, I think is a good thing, because everyone should know the truth. So, yay! Hey, Brittany, how's it going? Love this. Thank you. I got someone helping me moderate. So we don't know what we're doing, either one of us. New to the lives, but just happy to be here. I haven't seen any questions pop up. So some of the questions, this is a good point. My sweetheart moderator is helping me with. Some of the questions that I've received are, about the posts that I've done, whether or not the sheriff's deputy from the softball story, which was the most recent series that I put up, if he was fired. And I think in the last part, you see that he wasn't. He still very much works there. He's been checking my profile like on the regular, like 2, 3, 4 times a day, which is hilarious. So also using his real government name in his TikTok profile, which I think is a little bold, right? If you're going to be in these streets acting that way. Pam, you're always so sweet and encouraging. I love that. So thanks for joining, Lindsay. Appreciate it. But yeah, so that's been interesting. But no, he is definitely not been fired. And I actually, because this came up too a couple times, like, you know, his conduct was criminal. And I, you know, as a former magistrate, I am certain that we are at the probable cause for assault on a female. Because in North Carolina, it's just basically, are you a male over the age of 21? And are you a female over the age of 18 for that charge? And then the assault of conduct. So, okay, we did get a question here.
No. Has the tax team been successful in lowering the taxes yet? I've seen only the 4 of them were given their personnel. They got basically their personal.
Yes. So Brittany has pointed out in the comments and asked a question if the tax team has been able to lower our taxes. No, and no. They've been really good at trying to raise the amount of money that's needed, taking things from the general fund for their own little pet projects, as we saw with Night Advantage LLC, their attempt to do that. Somehow Messy Max found himself a backbone, or maybe he thought it looked a little extra messy for him to vote for it, but he did not. He was the vote that basically allowed that to fail. They have they voted at the January meeting, which yours truly was there live and in person in the public comment section there. That's when Sloppy Joe got a little confused as to how to tell time. Yeah, the big clocks around counting it down was too difficult to comprehend. But no, they haven't raised anything. And I will say, I mean, to raise taxes at this point, the county is the one who levies the taxes, right? And so they've already done everything they need with their reevaluations and the tax rate that was set by the city. Because keep in mind, you know, if you live inside the city limits, you're paying Beaufort County taxes, but you're also paying the county taxes that everyone pays in the unincorporated parts of the county. But the tax office had already prepared the bill, so they weren't going to be able to change the tax rate, once they were sworn in December for this year. So those are going out. What they're going to do is with the budget, that the budget sessions usually start in February, March. So, hey, Mandy, thank you. Oh, yeah. So, Meemaw Bear, you're right. So when Sloppy Joe, when he tried to interrupt me at the meeting, I did my mom instincts and I said, no, sir. So I got a little one and I have to, throughout life, have to say no, sir, a lot. Usually I do a snap as well and maybe a little point like, no, sir, no, sir. But thankfully, I restrained myself in that moment. But yeah, no, we went ahead and I will be back. Yes. So the cell phones, they're new. I think there may have been a laptop that was also approved, which, personally, I think the fact that they're doing this at technically their second meeting. I mean, they've already made calls and sent emails and text messages with their personal phones anyways. And they have. That's all I'm going to say about that one. But stay tuned for sure. But yeah, so that happened in January. But there was talks about it and emails about it beforehand. So, but it's been an interesting kind of ride, right? With all of these special called meetings. Like I said in some of the videos, they've already done 3 special called meetings. And the funny thing is, I think in the last 3 years with the city of Washington, they've only had maybe 1 special called meeting. And so that whole part is strange. And remember, a special called meeting doesn't have a public comment section. So citizens don't have the right, like I did, on January 12th to stand up there and speak your piece. Special call meeting, there's none of that. So they only hear from the people when they call them up, like you saw with the Night Advantage LLC contract. They called him up, and the mayor had called another business. Now, the funny thing was Sloppy Joe, up in the comments the next few days, is then trying to drag that business up and down the streets saying, defamatory things. So, oh, hey, Joan, how are you? Good to see you, girly. So, but that's been kind of interesting, honestly. And as y'all know, I've done the role of the spouse of a city manager and an attorney. So I've kept my mouth shut on a lot of things. Now, you're not going to hear me talk on this platform on anything that's privileged, because, that's a risk of my law license, and your girl's smarter than that. That's for certain. One thing for sure, two things for certain. So I worked hard to get it. I'm not going to lose it on a technicality. So now some other people, that might be a question. But I've enjoyed it so far, having the ability to speak my opinion and attempt to, I'm trying to educate people as well as inform. And there's a lot of things that I think, you forget from either civics in high school, or if you're not a political scientist, like, I went to ECU and did a 4-year political scientist degree. And if you're not in that realm, you may not know. And so I'm happy to do that. One thing I'm really, really passionate about, and I have mentioned in a couple videos, is we're coming up on primary season. So that is where the political parties, they pick the candidates that they're going to have up in the general election in November. And so early voting starts in February, and you need to have your voter registration in and ready 25 days before that election. So you want to go ahead and do that. And we've got some really hotly contended seats. At the House District 79 with Kiki. Kiki's got a challenger, and he's getting some juice. He's got billboards out there and doing a good job getting his name out. I've seen some, social media ads click through, which has been good. And then, trying to get the sheriff's office figured out. So they do have a Democrat candidate that has filed. So to file for a primary, they had to file by, I think it was the 19th of December in 2025, any candidate for either party. And so if nobody filed, right, in opposition to a party, then there wouldn't be a challenger in November. So then the one party, so say, for example, House District 79. To my knowledge, no one in House District 79 from a Democratic Party filed. So there won't be anybody from that side. So the Republican Party primary will decide who is going to have that seat, because they won't be unopposed in the general election. I did see one comment, I think, from Joan. Do we know if they've advertised for the manager yet? The city manager position? I believe so. They got that geriatric in there. 80-some years old, going to come out of retirement to, save the tax kings. And it's funny because, again, like I said, at the January 12th, he was campaigning for him. He donated to the mayor as well as Messy Max directly. And then he donated to the political PAC that bought those tax cut team signs, the blue and white ones that had Messy Max, Sloppy Joe, and the Suckleburger on those signs, as well as some others that did not win their election. So
It's still on.
I don't believe that there is a I think they have posted for the city manager position.
They have. It's still live.
It is still live. So, and that's usually a process. I'll tell you, the way my husband was hired, they had a national advertisement. You submit your resume or your Vita, and then they review it for minimum qualifications, because that job posting is going to have those minimum qualifications. If memory serves correct, when he applied, it was 10 years of city manager experience with a preference for a certified city manager. And then they do interviews, and he did 2 rounds of interviews. I think he did a phone interview and then 2 in person. And then, they contact you when they make a decision. And so that's what I hope they'll do this time, because that's what the city deserves for sure. But yeah, so hopefully they get some good candidates that don't read the local paper and see how we like to drag our city employees up and down on our social media. Because I'll be honest with you, I've been going to these conferences as a spouse with my husband on and off for 18 years, and they're not going to, people in that industry don't take kindly to that type of behavior. And that's going to impact your recruitment ability as a city, for a city manager. So that's something the tax kings might want to keep in mind as they run their mouths. So Jason NC76 posted, "What's the recourse for your husband disputing the lies that were leveled against him?" So my husband was considered a public official. And without actual malice in North Carolina, it's difficult to, get any kind of a reputation award, which would be for a defamation, right? And defamation is basically when you say or write something that is not true about someone, right? Now, a defense would be if it was true for a regular person, like a private citizen, like, the people that are joined on this live are likely private citizens and not public officials. Now, for public officials, you have to prove actual malice. And that's a higher evidentiary standard. But addition to that, you have to prove damages. So it's like, okay, we got some, wackadoodles telling lies, like they've not turned an audit in 3 years, which is a lie. You can see it on the North Carolina Treasurer's website. That's, Suckleberger. Hello, learn to Google. And, that they're late on the audit. That's the latest rhetoric coming out of Suckleberger's mouth, that they're late on the audit. Well, the 25-year fiscal year audit wasn't even due until regularly December 31st, but the Department of Treasury, with the government shutdown, extended that to the end of February. So they're not late because it still ain't due. But recourse, we could sue civilly. That's something that is, still always on the table. But, for what? Us to pay a lawyer? Because, I'm not going to do it myself, because to represent yourself is to have a fool for a client. And that's not going to be something I do. I don't practice regularly in, defamation or First Amendment law. And so I would never feel comfortable taking a case, especially when I'm emotionally, attached to it. Because I'll be honest with you, it's gross. It's gross to see grown people that own businesses openly trash someone who has done nothing but a good job for the city. And that's just not my personal opinion. Obviously, I'm very biased about what my husband did and how he did it. And I'm not saying he was perfect and I'm perfect or anything like that. But what I'm saying is, for these type of people to be, the trolling in the comments section, that own businesses, that, have reputations themselves that they would likely not want someone else to say something nasty about, to be the ones fueling it is pretty gross. So it's kind of that whole treat others like you'd like to be treated, since we all probably strive to do that, or we should anyways.
Oh, they say they're big Christians.
But yeah, but we, it was hard. I'll be very honest with you. Seeing a video, we were on a field trip when someone sent it to me, the Suckleberger's video that he was going to fire my husband. And this was 2 days after he'd, gone and had the lunch at the Suckleberger's place of business. And then to have basically him, be up there unhinged saying he was going to fire him, right? And said his name. Use the government name, use the position, the whole thing. And, whoever's taking the video is like, go, and they, record the whole thing and put it up like they're big bad. And then they take it down like 10, 12 hours later and try to pretend like it never happened. And, that's what's ridiculous. So Emma has posted, if a city manager is not hired before the current interim city manager's hours are maxed out, what happens? I mean, that's a great question. You can't 1099, in my opinion, a city manager position, because that's an established employment position. And, you know, a lot of times people use independent contractors. Well, there's a test that the IRS uses to determine whether or not someone is a bona fide independent contractor. And there are, you know, like 8 or 9 different factors for that duty of control test, or the independent contractor test. But the most important of those factors, the one that's weighted the heaviest, is the duty of control. And the reality is, you don't, as a city manager, you don't get to just go in and be like, oh, this is what I'm going to do, and you're not going to tell me. You know, they work based off of the votes and the action taken by city council. No. So here's the other thing, the interim, Emma, good point. The interim city manager, and when Sloppy Joe gave his riveting press, tour of introducing the city interim city manager, they said, well, hey, y'all, he's gonna volunteer. Because the funny thing is, you know, the interim city manager, the geriatric, is a retired employee from the local government unit, right? So they're in the same retirement system that he's working in now. So he has earning preclusions. Once you go into retirement, they're not going to let somebody jump back out of retirement and then start earning a full wage. So he's maxed on the amount of salary and the number of hours he can work. So for him to be like, I'm just going to volunteer, well, that's not possible, because we have things called the Fair Labor Standards Act, and we do not allow employees to volunteer for their position. That's uncompensated labor. So it'd be really interesting knowing the 1099 independent contractor test and the FLSA, how they plan on wiggling their way into volunteer hours. But that's just me. So Jason is asked, how about the more recent lies from the developer during this month's meeting? That was... Yeah. So the first thing that when I came home, my husband was like, I can tell you this. I talked to a lot of people. I've never promised somebody a 50-year lease for $1. That's for certain. Now, there are, you know, times where cities lease businesses property. And I mean, that's happened in the city of Washington during my husband's tenure. But that, yeah, I mean, I think we can all see what happened with that. We've had a change of leadership. No one's there. It's easy to put words in a dead man's mouth, right? They make a lot of promises. Dead men around here make a lot of promises because they're not there to refute those statements. So I think one thing that the city attorney pointed out is that in October, when that developer came to the city council meeting, at no point did anyone say they were leasing city property for $1 for 50 years. So, you know, not a lot has changed in October. And again, in October was when that spicy little video the Suckelberger put up, letting us know what the Tax King's plans were. And we had heard a rumor that their plan was to put the geriatric in. And his car had been seen at some very interesting properties. So, you know, we've known him. I actually knew the geriatric back in 2002. So I've eaten dinner at his table as a sorority sister of his daughters. Sure did. And so I've known him for over 20 years. And, you know, he's not telling the truth when his mouth moves. That's all I'll say on that one. So, yeah. But the developer, no, ridiculous. You know, would you get anything? Would you spend any kind of money on property if you didn't have something in writing? And knowing that it takes board action to do those type of agreements. You know, city managers don't have special wands that they get to use to, you know, get people special contracts and stuff. It takes board action, which is why we saw in December the Tax Kings try to bring that Night Advantage LLC to the board. So, yes, I am live. I am. I see that comment. Yay. That's right. Live and in person. And it's probably a little awkward for all of us. I'm sure I'm saying and all the good brain fillers, but I'm just trying to keep it real with, this page, the content that's up. I know that there have been a lot of, comments. I've gotten them direct message as well as on the videos, and I can't always, respond as much as I would like. So yeah, like I said in the public comment, the Night Advantage LLC, I see you, Joan, with the night was just a joke. His wife is the second chair of the Beaufort County Republican Party, and he himself gave a donation to the Beaufort County for Citizens for a Better Government, basically the Beaufort County Republican Party PAC. He made a contribution that paid for those tax king signs or tax team signs. So then, ironically, for again, the first meeting, them to try to get that contract through, questionable at best. So at worst, something else. But yeah, night has been interesting. It's definitely been one where during the campaign season, we hear all these rumors. People will call and be like, I heard, if this mayor wins, he's going to fire your husband. Well, if this mayor wins, she's going to fire your husband. And we've had to roll with that before in life. And we do. And we're just like, it's not just going to be one position that has to fire. We know how to count. It takes three. And I think that's when you see the tax kings where a lot of their behavior is likely to be unchecked. Unless people come to meetings, unless people, start emailing them and expressing their opinions in the meetings, the public comment section, us saying things on Facebook isn't going to count. They have 3 votes. They can do anything they want. That's the reality. And there's some questions as to whether or not where the mayor would actually, fall in a vote on certain things. So I think, she took, 2,100 from the Suckleberger. And, he wanted her elected for some reason. So I think that's very important to keep in mind where, I think some parties are trying to distance themselves from the tax kings. And the reality is, I don't know if I could attribute a distance. I think there's a lot of very common behavior and probably a lot of very common efforts being made by more than just 3 people on that board. So NF told me it was his intention to fire your husband. Well, yeah, he put it out on that spicy little video too. Yeah, I'm sure he told a bunch of people. And, I just can't respect anybody that puts something up and does, takes it down. I'm like, just be you, honey. Own it. You put it up there. Hold it up there. Let it live. Don't try to be a coward and take it down and then be like, oh, I'm standing in front of the library. I didn't mean it. What I meant was, no, you had the opportunity. He won't live. It was recorded. Go. Right? So, yeah. But, that's who they are. We didn't want her. He didn't want her at the end. Well, he got her. So, okay, let's see. When the B&B zoning issue comes up, seems like one councilman and the mayor will need to step aside. For sure. Yeah, I think, at any point, if somebody has a conflict in the outcome, they need to go through their state ethics training for elected officials. And remind themselves of their ethical responsibility to recuse themselves. So why haven't any of them mentioned the $23 million in debt since they took over? I don't know. Maybe because they spoke to the finance officers. Maybe they read some old audits. Maybe they looked at the awards that the city has consistently received for the past 20 years of excellent financial management, including last year. So, yeah, that's, it's a false narrative. That's why nobody's talking about it anymore. But I think budget season is going to be very telling with what their true intentions are. I think they'll try to use that again. I think, my little crystal ball, what I'm looking at and assuming the new fake rhetoric will be is the fact that, oh, well, we need to sell the aquatic center because it doesn't make money. We need to sell the library because it doesn't make money. We need to, well, and a lot of that land is, it's in a trust. So we don't even have the right to sell it. They probably need to check those deeds on that one. They probably have some master plans to bring in some great developers for these projects. But yeah, I think the problem is, and this is just something in general, I'm going to say, if you're a liar and you live a private life, then a lot of times those lies don't come out, right? The general public doesn't ever learn that you're a liar because there's only certain little groups maybe that you've lied to. But when you are a liar and you throw yourself into a public arena, well, honey, things get checked very, very quick. And one thing that these social media streets are good for is sniffing out a liar and proving them to be one. So I think we're going to start to see a lot of that. Particularly, we have, let's see, we got the three of them plan to eliminate the mayor's position. So, the council, the form of government that we have is set in our charter. So to do that, they would need someone like Kiki with the 79th district to sponsor a bill to go to the House, and then it would go to the Senate, and that would amend the charter. And that's how it would do. And for me, honestly, I would put that as a very possible plan for them, for certain. Because Kiki don't ask people, who needs to pass a bill. He'll write one on his own real quick, and he did that with the Airport Authority. We saw that back in the July of 2022, because the city never came to him and asked him for an airport authority. Okay, he just took that upon himself. Now, I know why he did it. There'll be a video that posts why he did it. It has to do with a campaign contribution that he received in April of that year, as well as a RFQ that he sent out to that same person that sent the campaign contribution in March of that year. So, all right, Jason, when do you expect them to force Madam Mayor's hand on the lawsuit issue? Pretty quick. So, the way it was filed, I believe the 25th of October. And the way a federal civil lawsuit works is, you file the complaint as the plaintiff, and then the defendant files a response, and that's called an answer. And you have a certain, calendar amount of time that you have to file that answer. You can do, a request for extension of time. And I think that would have been reasonable because we had a new city council elected in between that and a new mayor. And now an adverse party, the plaintiff, is in fact our mayor. So, let's see, mealy mouth. JD attempted it during the last meeting, but it went nowhere. Let's see. Yeah, I think, when you put on your agenda that you're going into closed session for a particular item, then you need to go into closed session for that item. And I think that was the issue in January. NF claims he has two people in the legislature that will vote in favor to eliminate her. Well, NF needs a couple more than two because it has to pass through, again, the House and the Senate. And again, this General Assembly in North Carolina that we have right now can't even pass a state budget, okay? So them to get a charter piece of legislation might be a pretty bold statement there. But not outside of a inconceivable, right? Princess Bride reference. Kiki needs to go. Finally, someone with some sense is running against him. Yes. So, but remember, if Kiki doesn't go in the primary, Kiki stays for another 2 years. So, we need to be looking to some unaffiliated voters, who are not part of, Kiki's really big with Granny Deeds, who's over the Republican Party here in Beaufort County. I can't speak to Hyde or Dare or I'm blanking on the other one that he represents in the 79th district. I think I'm just kind of nervous, but I don't know who their Republican parties are led by, I know in Beaufort County, it's Granny Deeds. And Granny Deeds has been with Kiki since 2019. So Granny Deeds got her start in a little politics as an elected official in 2019. Granny Deeds before then worked over in Pitt County with the Water and Soil Commission as an admin. And then she volunteered for Kiki's 2019 campaign, and then, was able to work her way somehow. Got appointed when there was a vacancy at the Register of Deeds office. And, serendipitously, she was able to get that position. And so she rides hard for Kiki. That's for sure. So it's going to be hard with, one of the larger population areas to be behind him. But I think we need to look at, if you're in a registered Democrat, now would be a good time for you to go over to unaffiliated. Again, North Carolina, we're a closed party system. And what that means is if you are a registered Republican or an unaffiliated voter, you get to vote in a primary, the Republican primary. If you are a registered Democrat or an unaffiliated voter, you can only vote in the Democrat Party primary. And so some of these key positions, just because of where we are and the district lines that are drawn, they're decided in the primaries. And the House District 79 has been fully Republican for, since its inception, I believe in 2002 or 2003. 2022, 2023. So, they redid those lines there. So Kiki had been elected when it was originally Craven County and Beaufort County, and then they redid the lines, and now he's Hyde, Beaufort, parts of Dare, and one more. I don't know why I can't remember this. So, all right, one more. The three of them plan on giving her an ultimatum: resign or drop the lawsuit. Well, I mean, their ultimatum right now is somewhat with no teeth, because what are they going to do? She's going to be like, no. Or what? You won't make me mayor? You don't have that authority. Only the people have that right now. And then I guess the legislature. And that would be pretty unprecedented. I think it would start to look a little messy. Even Kiki, I don't know if Kiki would want to be in the middle of that ridiculousness. But again, it's Kiki, and he loves to Kiki. So we never know. NF claims that he hates all Republicans in the area. Well, that's silly. There's no need to hate all Republicans. There's no need to hate anyone, really. We just need to learn how to work together, And I think that kind of, for me, the two-party system that we have right now is a lot of this us versus them shenanigans. And when have you, as an American, felt like that has gotten you anything as an individual? I know it gets these two-party people reelected pretty quick, but for us as people, that doesn't serve us at all. It does not serve me to hate a Democrat. It does not serve me to hate a Republican, because ultimately legislation has to pass through a House and a Senate at the state level as well as federally. So the more people are getting along and trying to find common ground, the better everyone's going to be. So yeah, that's just me on my soapbox. So I'm not one to say, oh, this party's terrible or that party's terrible, because the reality is I'm not impressed with either one of them. That's why I'm unaffiliated. I make them earn me, because I'm not just going to give my votes out to anybody because they have a particular name in parentheses behind their name on the ballot. So, I love it. Thank you for that. I appreciate the support on that. I did say a mouthful. I probably was rambling too. But, that's what happens. Sometimes you get on a soapbox. But, so, I don't know if anybody has any more questions. Anything about our tax king, City of Washington. Budget season's coming up. Those meetings are typically open to the public, but they only take public comment during the public comment advertised section. So you'll need to give your opinion on budgets, straight to the people who we elected. which, you know, the tax kings were elected. Nobody said you had to be smart to be elected, right? You just have to be popular. And they were the most popular. So if we feel like they're not working for us, you know, then we need to let them know in a, you know, polite, respectful manner. There's no need to, you know, cuss or fuss anybody. No, I don't want anybody, you know, no kerfuffles, right? The only kerfuffle I want is a possum in a sassy little hat with a scooter. It's got a scooter. I don't know if you can see the scooter. I love the scooter. I mean, you got a possum with a scooter and a hat causing a kerfuffle. It's me all the way. So, what do you think the city's biggest challenge is going forward? I know there's a lot. Well, I think anytime you have a dysfunctional elected board, which my personal opinion, they dysfunctional, that can really impact the culture within the organization. And the reality is, I love my husband. I think, you know, I'm so biased. I think he is the greatest thing out there. But the reality is there's 300 employees in that city, and they're vital to the operations of that city. We've got EMS, police, fire. I mean, just look at this week, the amount of people that were needed if the weather had been terrible. Public Works, the electric department. And when you're dealing with a dysfunctional board and some toxic leadership, because the geriatric wasn't known to be a great leader. Okay, nobody was going to write a book about him and his leadership style. He was, you know, he was actively one of those in the prime of his career when, you know,
Reagan was in office.
Yeah, when Reagan was in office, and I was with a teether. So I think when you look at that culturally, things have shifted quite a bit. I mean, this is the type of man that's like, hey, I don't care if you work well from home. It's not really working if you're not at City Hall. I mean, he's that type. So I think you'll lose employees. I think that's the greatest risk to the city right now, is losing great employees. Because if you don't have the employees in these key positions to keep the utilities running, to keep the peace, to keep development running, it's going to falter, and we'll feel it. And that'll impact outside of City Hall quickly. I mean, you'll feel that within weeks. So, yeah, we've got some great employees. My husband always said the number one asset our city had wasn't the fact that we had multiple, enterprise funds like the marina, electric, sewer, water, all of that. It was the people that work there. The people are the greatest assets. And I think it's probably a scary time to be an employee with the city, because, you know, you got like multiple people that don't like each other making decisions. So that would be hard to be like, ooh, what do they want us to do? And that's the board, the city council and the mayor, what set the strategic directions and priorities for the city. And if they're dysfunctional with one another, then that's going to trickle on down real quick. So, all right, next question. NF wrote a letter asking Bravo to resign that he wanted me to post under my name. Ooh. Well, I don't like anybody that writes a letter for somebody else, right? Unless you're an actual copy editor or, you know, a hired staff writer. I think if you have something to say, you need to sign your name to it. And, you know, that's also why I got out here a little spicy on my TikToks. Well, honey, I went and said it to their face too. I think when something is worth saying, you say it with your chest and you sign your name to it. And if somebody's not willing to say it with their chest and sign their name to it, then they should probably be quiet and sit down. That's what I think. So, yes, Joan out here agreeing that we have some awesome city employees. I think it's hard right now to be a city employee. So, you know, if you know one, reach out to them and thank them for their hard work. And I think, too, we as citizens need to stand up for the city employees. That's what we need to do. We need to ensure that their jobs are protected, you know, that these tax kings don't try to cut things because they don't value, you know, maybe community policing or events within the city. I think it's really important that the citizens get dialed in to how the employees are being treated. There are some significant concerns that I have with the geriatric being in power for particular populations of persons. And I think we should all be dialed into the decisions that geriatric and the tax kings are making for particular demographics of people. So that's all I'm going to say right now about that. But yeah, they need our support. You know, again, weather events. I mean, this sounds kind of silly, but weather events, you know, some groups like EMS and fire department, police, they have actual like, hey, it's, you know, Police Appreciation Day. So you could always drop a card off or a gift card or, you know, some kind of, you know, bought snacks from Walmart. They always appreciate that. They have lounges and stuff. So do Public Works. In the summer, I think it's great when we see neighbors buying packs of Gatorades, right? And for them to have, because they're out on the back of a trash truck and, you know, 101 degree with humidity index. So, all right, let's see. When you make statements at the city council, can you ask them questions? So in public comment, you can technically ask them questions. The reality is they're not going to answer them. Almost never. And that's because they probably shouldn't. Because it's not an agenda item, and so there wouldn't be a way to necessarily get things on a conversation, or excuse me, on an agenda for action. I think it's more just you voicing your opinion. That's what you should expect in public comment. And then letting it marinate and maybe following up with them. I did see the mayor is having office hours, so that's good. I don't know if she would necessarily meet with me, but maybe she would. You know, so we'll see. I won't hold my breath. She also probably won't be talking about public comments on the podcast. I think we're probably going to guarantee that we glaze over what I said on January 12th. That's probably not going to make it in her latest edition of the podcast, right?
On her new city phone.
Yeah, on her new city phone, though. She's going to be doing all that hard podcasting. How best do we keep this conversation moving forward? Organizing efforts. So I'm starting the Main Street Coalition. I don't know what that means exactly. This is the whole goal of my TikTok since I did my first video, was just to educate and entertain. And I think starting a conversation is important. We're not able to elect people for another 2 years unless there's a vacancy. And so we won't, as citizens, have the ability to change who represents us until, 2 more years. But I think that, what we do is we continue to call them on it. We need more people at public comment sections. And that's how you put pressures on elected officials. You go to them, you send emails, you try to have a conversation with them to see your side. We're in a representative democracy. So even if they hear from 100,000 people that an idea is bad, ultimately they can vote to do it. You're only as good as the people you put into office. So we'll have to see if they listen to the people or not. I'm not holding my breath again. But I think we need to be thinking to look for some better people for next time. 2028, we need to be, or I guess 2027, thank God. We need to be thinking about some better candidates, finding them, getting them ready to go. That's what I would do personally. And I think you support the things that you support. If you don't support someone's representation of you, then you don't support them, if you know what I mean. So I was so upset to see the town hall thingy with only selected council members. Yeah, well, those are the 3 that they think are the best. So they're not going to be including the other 2 elected officials who actually, have tacit knowledge and experience on this board. I think there's probably a multitude of reasons why they're not including those 2 individuals. I think we're all smart enough to know why. So how is she still open when she doesn't live at the L Hotel? Isn't that law? So a bed and breakfast operates with a special use permit. So her property is a residentially zoned property, right? And so when, she went, and again, in the federal lawsuit that she filed against the city, and the, past mayor as an individual, which is laughable in and of itself. But when she did that, she included the minutes from July 15th, 2021, I believe. I don't know off the top of my head. I have my notes somewhere. I'll look at it. But in those, she included the Board of Adjustment minutes where she got her special use permit. And in there, she clear as day says she's going to rent 4 rooms and she's going to live downstairs. And at no point does she talk about weddings, baby showers, nothing in those minutes. Nothing. And those minutes, the Board of Adjustments meetings are quasi-judicial proceedings. So they have a lot more detailed minutes than just your regular. It's almost like a court transcription where you would have, in court where it's like, this person said this person said that, this person, objected on these grounds. And this was the basis of the argument, word for word. So the minutes of the Board of Adjustments meeting are up there. And she says clearly, I live downstairs. That's the plan. I will live downstairs and I will only rent out 4 rooms. And then we can look to the August 2025 minutes and see if those stories aligned. So, but yeah, she's operating because the Board of Adjustments meeting in August that was continued to December and then continued for another 4 months. They did not shut her down. They had the authority to shut her down in August. They had the authority to shut her down in December, and they have the authority to shut her down in 4 months. So, but they're kind of doing this, to be continued. And honestly, I think they're just putting it down the road. And so I've got my theory as to why. But that's just me. So, got to look at those campaign finance contribution reports to see who might be on those committees and who donated to what. So, but thankfully someone stopped it and made it, oh no, I'm not going to read that one. Made it KK meeting? I don't know what that means. I don't know. What does that mean? We'll have to see. I don't know what that means. Can you clarify? But yeah, so, well, I didn't want to stay too long, because I'm, got to go wrangle some children. But I hope to do another live and see if we can't get some more information out there. I think you asked great questions. Feel free to look back on the videos and come up with any more questions. The videos, this is TikTok, and the videos really should only be like 1 to 2 minutes. I think scrolling attention span is like 1 minute. And most of my TikToks are like 15, 25 minutes. Which is insane. So, but try to suffer through them if you can. And if you have questions, let's do another live. And I think picking up on, I believe it was Jason's question, what we can do to try to mobilize and get some of this corrected. Because, bad behavior unchecked results in more bad behavior. And they've done enough since their election and their first 2 official regularly scheduled meeting and their 3 special called meetings, that I think we have a good indication of some bad behavior is on the horizon with the budget season. So, well, thank y'all very much. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your Sunday. And I don't know. Check out the kerfuffle shirt. I just can't. It's so cute. All right. Well, I'm going to figure out how I end the live. I didn't look at that part. I only figured out how to start it. So let's see. I think I got it. All right. Bye, y'all. 20 viewers here. I'd love to